Dusty controller. Picture me. My wrist is frozen.
Now, Dusty Locane, is the industry trying to replace Pop Smoke or what? Some of you guys might recognize the name Dusty Locane, mostly in relation to the Pop Smoke comparisons. A couple things I want to bring up in regards to this conversation, so yeah. With that being said, let's talk about it. No, he's the dust after the smoke. That's what they're saying. How many of you guys are familiar with the name Dusty Locane? Dusty Locane is a 22-year-old rapper out of Brooklyn, New York, who's been on the up and up for a little bit of time. His first official music video was Rollin' and Controllin' Freestyle. That came out on the 26th of August, 2020. After that video started taking off back then, Dusty followed that one up with Rolando, Con the Rain, which dropped a couple months later after that. He then followed that up with a couple other records like Intro to Me, Part 1, Rumble, Rollin' and Controllin' Part 2. Ever since then, Dusty Locane has, like I said earlier, been on the up and up. All of his music videos have been doing some solid numbers, and he's been rising quickly despite some of the controversy we're going to talk about right now. If you've been paying attention to Dusty Locane, then you know that he's been labeled as a Pop Smoke clone by a lot of people. The reasoning for that being pretty obvious. Dusty Locane does resemble Pop Smoke a lot.
You was trying to get your name up. I was here chasing paper.
Some history behind Dusty Locane and Pop Smoke. They actually grew up around each other and were even in the same elementary school when they were young. When Dusty Locane was starting to take off, there was a rumor going around, not sure if it was started by Dusty himself, and the rumor was that Dusty Locane and Pop Smoke were cousins. Now that actually turned out to be false. They're not cousins. They just happen to grow up around each other. Pop Smoke's brother, Obasi Jackson, actually denied this rumor last year on an Instagram live session.
When it comes to Pop Smoke, niggas just acting weird, you feel me? Dusty Locane is not my cousin. I don't know that nigga. Shout out to him because he's doing his thing though. See, that's one thing. Oh, 100.
So as you could hear straight from the source, they're not cousins. I guess a lot of people decided to run with this for the simple fact that Dusty Locane sounds so much like Pop Smoke. Now let's talk a little bit about that though. Even though I've known about Dusty Locane since the beginning when he dropped his first official video, it wasn't until recently that I actually took the time to go through all of his music. Going back to when I initially heard about him when he first started to blow up, yes, my initial thought was, that sounds a lot like the late great Pop Smoke. Aside from the fact that vocally Dusty resembles Pop Smoke a lot, the overall vibe and atmosphere of his music, it's very hard to not think about Pop Smoke when you're listening to him. Dusty Locane is probably the closest thing we not only have to Pop Smoke, but will ever get to Pop Smoke. 90% of why these comparisons are even a thing is because of the voice. Just like Pop Smoke, he has an extremely deep voice. On the vocal aspect of things, by the way, I actually don't think Dusty Locane is trying to sound like Pop Smoke because he can't control his vocal tone. That's something that's naturally there. Is it possible to manipulate your voice as an artist to make it sound a certain way? Absolutely. Just ask Playboy Cardi, who sounds like my 4-year-old cousin when he's rapping. For Dusty Locane, when I think about him in relation to these Pop Smoke comparisons, I think a lot of it has to do with, yes, of course, the voice, but also I think a lot of it has to do with the style and the aura he's bringing on his records. Aside from his actual voice, that's one really big thing that really resembles Pop Smoke. As far as the voice thing, by the way, that's something he can't really control, right? And on top of that, I watched an interview with Dusty and that's how he naturally talks. I didn't get the vibe that he was manipulating his vocal tone to make it sound like Pop Smoke. Now going back to the style and aura thing I mentioned earlier, that's actually a fair criticism to bring up. I don't know if Dusty has credited Pop Smoke as a musical inspiration, but he sounds like he's inspired by him. Dusty Locane's delivery when he's rapping definitely gives me that feeling. What we have right here is a very unusual situation though, because even though they weren't homies like that, they grew up around each other and even went to the same school. On top of that, their vocal tonalities sound so similar. I mean, what are the odds that something like that happens? Let me give you my honest and raw perspective on this, by the way. The way I look at it is this: if Dusty Locane making music and doing his thing shines light on Pop Smoke's legacy and the influence he had on the industry, I don't personally see an issue with that. As long as Dusty Locane isn't oblivious to the comparisons, which he's not since he's addressed them, in my eyes, it's fair game. The biggest reason why I feel this way, and this is the #1 reason by the way, his actual voice just happens to sound like Pop Smoke's voice. And like I said earlier, that's not something you can really control. I mean, he talks this way. This is the way he naturally sounds. Two other things I want to bring up regarding this conversation. The first one being, when Dusty Locane on an interview was asked about Pop Smoke and the history behind their relationship, the first thing he said was, "Long live Pop Smoke, the greatest to ever do it." Literally the first thing that came out of his mouth, I thought that was really dope to see. If the first thing that comes out of his mouth is praising Pop Smoke, who he's always getting compared to, I think that's a good sign. It simply shows good character in my eyes. And also, the other thing I want to bring up, on his same interview, Dusty Locane talked about how when Pop Smoke was popping, doing his thing and shining big time, he refrained from telling people that they knew each other and grew up around each other because he didn't want to put any focus on him while Pop Smoke was lit. That's another thing that made me look at Dusty Locane a little bit different. Like I said earlier, Dusty Locane definitely does sound like he's inspired by Pop Smoke. And bringing up the obvious, by the way, I don't think Dusty Locane would be popping if Pop Smoke hadn't popped. So the Woo definitely paved the way for not only Dusty but a lot of other rappers in the Brooklyn drill wave, including Dusty Locane. As long as Dusty Locane keeps it pushing by working on building his own unique wave and style, I think he's going to be good. With that being the case, just due to the fact that his voice naturally sounds so much like the late Pop Smoke, it's definitely going to be hard for him to completely escape those comparisons. It could be done, but it won't be easy. The last thing I want to bring up is this, and this is very important. You gotta let these artists grow. You know what I mean? A lot of times when certain artists get in the game and start popping off, because they're popping off and blowing up so fast, they don't get enough time to build their own unique identity and style as they're moving up in the industry. A good example of this is Lil TJ, who's from New York himself. Do you guys remember how when the boy Lil TJ got in the game, he got labeled as a clone of A Boogie? Lil TJ even addressed it on one of his records, one take, where he said, "They say I'm the new A Boogie, relax, I ain't never try to copy his swag, I'm just trying to put my hood on the map." And now, over 2 years after he dropped that album and song, Lil TJ has taken up his corner in the industry. The A Boogie comparisons are in the past, and yeah, the same thing obviously goes for this Dusty Locane conversation. Just from what I've heard from Dusty Locane personally, I think he has the potential to build his own unique identity and style if he keeps on applying pressure and puts in the work. Is Dusty Locane the new Pop Smoke? Absolutely not. There's only one Pop Smoke. That man is too iconic to ever get replaced by anybody. On the other hand, the same goes for Dusty Locane. There's only one of him. One thing I like about Dusty is the fact that even though he may not be completely original with his style, considering the fact that he sounds like Pop Smoke, I think he's doing a good job with making the music he's making. Dusty Locane could have, for all we know, been one of those rappers who sounds like another rapper but never got it poppin'. I say that to say it doesn't end at Dusty Locane sounding like the late Pop Smoke. You actually gotta create some dope ass music to back that shit up, regardless of if you're a clone or not, and Dusty Locane makes some good music. He's moved very respectfully by paying homage to the late Pop Smoke whenever he comes up in a conversation. As long as he's doing that, and as long as he's working on developing his own unique style as he's moving up in the industry, I don't really have much to say. Despite the fact that he sounds a lot like Pop Smoke, I think Dusty Locane is a dope artist, and that's that. But yeah, Pop Smoke. Dusty Locane, is the industry trying to replace Pop Smoke? I want to know what you think. If you guys are not familiar with Dusty Locane, like we talked about, he's a rapper out of Brooklyn, New York, who happens to vocally sound a lot like Pop Smoke. A lot of people think that he's intentionally copying Pop Smoke. Now you know what I think. What do you think about this entire Dusty Locane and Pop Smoke conversation? Definitely let me know in the comment section below, and let's have a discussion about this.